I'm going to go, in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm Carrie Enoch. I am the Campaign and Programs Director for the IgA Nephropathy Foundation. My daughter is now 16 years old. She was diagnosed with IgA nephropathy when she was 8. We had a rough road for a while, but she is now in full remission. So we're very, very, very grateful for that. And tonight, I'm going to introduce you to Stuart Miller, our Director of Strategic Plan and Government Affairs, and the man that keeps, oh, you know what? First, I'm going to introduce Bonnie Schneider and Ed Schneider, founders. I almost, okay. First, I'm going to, the two most important people in the room here. First, I'm going to introduce you. There's Bonnie and Ed, the founders of the foundation. So go ahead, Bonnie.
Just put up our sponsors real quick. This is weekly, so we're getting through it. But so those of you who don't know who I am, I just want to let you know that Bonnie and Ed Schneider, co-founders, our son 16 years ago came home from school with immense blood in his urine, and we didn't know what was happening to him. Fast forward a week later, diagnosed with IgA nephropathy, and desperate to find people that I could learn more about the disease. I had Google 16 years ago, which basically scared me, and I couldn't really find any answers. And we decided at the time, I was working in New York, that in order to do this and find a place for people to come, we needed to quit the job and take this seriously. And we did. So 16 years later, we've raised well over $1 million for research, and we now have 14,000 people, patients combined in all of our groups worldwide that have a place to go and to kind of support one another and do what I wanted to have. Just that IgAN family that could feel that camaraderie. So thank you to everybody that's going to be listening tonight and in the future. We're here for you. Just reach out to Carrie and I. We are here to help you, and we're super excited to deliver Spark to you. Although virtual, not our plan, but hopefully next year, Nashville, we're going to rock it. So I hope you're there with us. It's going to be fun.
Thank you all for being here.
Yeah, get your cowboy boots and your cowboy hats ready, guys, because we're going to go Wild Horse Saloon it up next year.
Anyway, I want to thank all the doctors in Alabama, University of Alabama, Birmingham, the doctors at Columbia University. Thank you.
Aww.
Okay. Thanks, Ed. Now I'm going to introduce you to Stuart, our Director of Strategic Plan and Government Affairs. And Stuart keeps us in line, keeps the ball rolling, thinks big, and keeps Bonnie and I thinking bigger and better every day. So Stuart, it's all you.
Thanks, Carrie. Appreciate the introduction. Everybody, I was diagnosed with IgA nephropathy in 2007, and I was able to manage my disease between some drug treatments and a change in my diet. In 2018, I received a living donor transplant from my wife through a peer exchange program. I'm very, very lucky and consider that sort of my second lease on life, and that's why I decided to get involved in the foundation. I'm very excited to be part of the leadership team as we continue to grow the foundation. We have some great things planned in the next couple of years, and we have a great leadership team, so anybody who wants to join and help us out, please just email Bonnie or Carrie, and we'll put you to work. A couple of housekeeping things for tonight. Please maintain yourself on mute during the presentation. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat box, and we'll hold the questions till after the end of the presentation. Our first guest tonight is Lynn Bartram. Lynn is a life coach and energy practitioner. Lynn believes that her clients are drawn to her for her natural intuition, compassion, and openness. Lynn helps her clients get clear about what brings them joy and fulfillment, removes roadblocks and limiting beliefs, getting in touch with their inner guidance, start actually living and experiencing more love. Lynn lives in Franklin, Tennessee, and provides coaching and healing sessions to clients nationwide, virtually through phone or Zoom. and locally at her office at the Estuary in Nashville. Many of her local clients are participants in the Estuary's Holistic Health Program, which offers services to support the physical, emotional, and spiritual needs of the chronically ill. These services are designed to complement clients' traditional medical treatments. Then also offers classes and weekend workshops on topics such as self-care, career change, life design, and thought management. Please welcome Lynn.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Stuart, and I'm so happy to be here. I'm excited about actually getting to meet everyone in person next year, I hope, fingers crossed. And so anyway, I'm just delighted to be here, and especially to be able to talk about such an important topic. I'm going to share my screen now to begin my presentation. So today we're talking about self-care, and I love the very appropriate analogy of putting your own oxygen mask on first. The reason that the flight attendants have to remind us of that every single time we get ready to fly is that, you know, our instinct is to care for our loved ones first. But with the reminder, we can understand what a tragedy it would be if in this moment of crisis, if you're dealing with a frightened toddler or a disoriented family member and you're struggling to get their mask on and lose consciousness, or even just getting confused yourself, endangering yourself and your family member. So we get the concept, we get it with the reminder from the flight attendant. And I want you to know and to understand that self-care is actually it's that critically important that we take care of ourselves first. We often think of that as a selfish thing, or the other common barrier to self-care is I am already overwhelmed with everything that I need to do in caring for my loved one. How can I possibly make more time for self-care? So what I hope you get out of my talk tonight is that I hope you get just a shift in perspective in regard to what self-care is, and that'll make those barriers to self-care. Sorry, forgot to start the slide there. Now we're full screen. So why is self-care so important? Because I want to talk for a minute about who are we? What is this self? I'm going to have to move my head here on the screen. Who are we and what is the self we are caring for? I want you to think about this. And if you're just settling in, if you're just joining us, if you're multitasking, please just focus on this for, I promise you, the next 15 minutes. I know my talk is longer, but if you just give me your undivided attention for the first 15 minutes, then you can multitask if you need to. Because what I want you to do is stop for just a moment and connect with that deepest, truest part of yourself. To do that, we have to slow down, we have to get centered, close your eyes, take a few deep breaths if you need to. But when we're really connected to that part of ourself, we are not just a body here to see how much we can get done in a day. We are so much more than that. We are mind, meaning our consciousness, and your spirit. I want you to think about what it is that makes you unique. What are your favorite things? What brings you a sense of awe? What brings you joy? What makes you laugh? I want you to consider that. And just as another example, just imagine your 5 favorite TV actors or movie actors. Favorite of all time, doesn't matter what age or genre. Imagine if they were exactly alike. Instantly, there is nothing special about any one of them if they're each exactly alike. It is our, it's that part of us that is so diverse and unique, that part of us that is our consciousness and our spirit that makes us who we are. And that preciousness, that is what we're caring for. So we are each unique expressions of creation. And if we do not express ourselves, if we fail to be present in the moment and bring the fullness of who we are to that moment, not only do we miss out on that opportunity to experience that, but the world will never know that experience because there's only one you. So I want you to get really clear on what it is we're caring for and the cost and the benefit of doing self-care. So self-care affirms, nurtures, and preserves the fullness of who we are. Sorry, for some reason my presentation is not advancing.
Did you get a pop-up? Did you get a pop-up from anybody before it stopped advancing?
It did.
Okay, yeah. That you're gonna have to stop sharing and then reshare.
Oh, okay.
And make sure if you get that
pop-up?
pop-up again, hit no.
Hit no. Okay.
Yeah. Can you tell that's happened a few times?
Yeah. It's like this has never happened before. What's going on?
It's like somebody tried to draw or something right on the screen. I don't know.
Okay. Okay, there we go. No, it's still not. Any other tips? I've not
Try
had
one
this.
more time.
I've not
Hey,
had
do you
this.
have a copy or no?
I have a copy, yeah. Why don't you go out of it and
Okay.
advance the screen and then reshare it and see if that helps.
Okay.
If not, I'll pull mine up.
Okay. If that happens again, we'll just pull yours up. I don't want to take away time.
Perfect.
So, why is self-care important? It fuels us. The reason it does is self-care, when we are in touch with that truest part of ourselves, that is what inspires us. That is what gives us access to our true feelings. So it fuels us in a way that is beyond the calories in, calories out. How much sleep did you get? How much calories, did you take in of your physical body? It is, you could be doing all those things and still just feel depleted, have no energy. It is self-care that provides us with that vitality and that enthusiasm. Self-care is necessary absolutely for our mental health, our emotional health, our physical health, our spiritual health. It affirms a nourishing, loving relationship with ourselves. It affirms our sense of self-worth. And it truly can make the difference between just getting by in your day and just actually in the worst of times when we're just getting things done, our mind constantly racing. We're not actually present in our day. So it moves us from being that, time is flying and I'm just exhausted when I get up, exhausted when I go to bed. And it moves us from that pattern to actually being present and being a participant in our life and giving us access to joy. Okay.
Not working?
Actually, there's this little. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and let you pull it up if you don't care.
I don't mind at all. Once you, there you go. All righty. You see it?
Yes,
Okay, there you go.
thank you.
You're welcome.
So I love this quote from Parker Palmer. Self-care is never a selfish act. It is simply good stewardship of the only gift I have, the gift I was put on earth to offer others. Anytime we can listen to true self and give the care it requires, we do it not only for ourselves, but for the many others whose lives we touch. And so she so eloquently says what I was trying to describe, which is when we are not fully present, when we are not fully being our best self and bringing our best self, our most genuine self to our lives, everyone misses out, not just us, but our loved ones. When you are your most genuine self, you are that person within interactions with your loved ones. You bring that to your work, you bring that to everything. So that is what self-care is creating for you. I'm ready for the next slide. But what I really want you to get out of tonight's talk, aside from everything else I say tonight, is this shift in perspective that I mentioned. Rather than thinking of self-care as something you need to do, I want you to think of self-care as a way of being in relationship with yourself. True self-care arises in response to the questions, what am I feeling right now? You have to get present. You ask, what am I feeling right now? What is it that I need? And how do I love and nurture myself? In the worst of times, that is my mantra. How do I love and nurture myself through this? So self-care doesn't necessarily require additional time. It is not something you have to make space for. It can simply be, if you do nothing else and change nothing else about your day, if you can just be present with yourself and be loving and kind toward yourself, asking yourself what it is that you need, and trying to respond in that way, it can be life-changing. It really can. So I'm ready for the next one. I appreciate you, Carrie. Thank you.
Oh, sure. I'm trying to just make sure that we can see it without seeing all the other stuff.
Yeah,
I don't know how to make it bigger. Is that good?
that's fine. So
Okay.
what everyone was sent, and if you haven't had a chance to open up the attachment with the WebEx link, that blank self-care toolkit is what I'm going to be talking about for the rest of my talk. And all I simply want to do is I'm going to briefly explain what the heading is. This is something that you're going to complete on your own. I want you to take time to do that. So, print it out, lay it on your kitchen counter or your desk or something. And as you think of things, you're going to fill this out. And when it gets complete enough to actually be a resource for yourself, take a picture of it and keep it on your phone. I literally want you to think of this as a toolbox. So this isn't something that weighs you down. Our toolboxes at home, we don't carry with them, carry them from room to room. We just go to them and access those handy tools when we need them. And that's what I want this to do for you. So on the left is the blank form that you were sent. On the right is my form. I'm going to use that as an example tonight. And if you think that it would be helpful for you to have that yourself, to remind yourself what it is, what types of things that you're wanting to put in a certain box, then at the end of my talk is a 3 ways to contact me. Just contact me any of those 3 ways. Say, Lynn, I really do want the example toolkit. I'll be glad to send it to you. I'm ready for the next slide. So the top of the toolkit, I want you to put your why. And except for our technical difficulties here tonight, I hope you really were able to connect with what it is that's at stake. What is your why? What is it your true self that you want to bring to your day, to your interactions with your loved ones? What does it mean, the difference between just head down, step by step going through the day and not really being present, and you being fully present and actively participating in your day? I want you to think about what that means to you and put that as your why. Because in this case and in any other goal setting that you do, your why is your big motivator. Willpower does not work for most people, and even those that it does, it is very short term, and it tends to be this bullying voice that tells us you should be doing this, you should be doing this. And that is not a very loving approach, and it's also not very effective. Your why is your big motivator. So continually reminding yourself about why this shift in the way you're in relationship with yourself, your way of doing self-care, why is that important to you? Put that at the top of your form. Okay, the next piece that I want to talk about is actually, it's the next slide, but it's actually at the very bottom of your form. I just wanted to go over it first in case I ran out of time. At the very bottom, there's a box that says signature character strengths, self-love, connect with self, and my top values. The signature character strengths list comes from the VIA Institute on Character Strengths Survey. It is a free survey. If you go to my website, I have a link for all the things like this that I'm going to refer to tonight, as well as I'm going to mention a couple TED Talks. They're all going to be on one resource page on my website. So you can either go there to access all those, or you can simply Google them later. But the strength survey, the reason I have clients put this on their list, our signature character strengths are strengths that are so innate to who we are that they come to us easily. And when we use those strengths, they fuel us. And you would think, why do I need to take some survey to tell me what that is if it's so innate to me and comes easily to me? These are the things that they're so innate to us. Usually it's someone else who tells us, you know, that really is a gift. Most people aren't able to do that. It is so innate to us, we overlook it. So take the quick character strengths survey. It doesn't take long to do. Your top character strengths, again, are things that fuel you. Those are mine that you see. The top one is appreciation of beauty and excellence. So just an example of how I use that. I first took this survey years ago when I was still working as a CPA. So in the middle of tax season and all that stress, I would just pull up a quick video of an Alexander Calder mobile or George Rickey kinetic sculpture. I love those. I love the way they're constantly something new and changing. I love the colors. I love the way the light reflected off them or they cast shadows. I could just sit and listen or watch those videos for even, 3 to 5 minutes. And oh my gosh, it was a balm to my soul. Like I was able to reconnect with myself in that moment, recenter myself, and then get on about my day. So that's just one example. If you will, become aware of what your signature strengths are, then you can use them more intentionally and incorporate them more into being an asset for you just throughout your day, or if you're under stress or things like that. So that's what that box is about. The self-love and the connecting with self. This is one of the boxes that's going to take you a while to complete. These are going to be your ways of connecting to yourself. I've listed mine. These are things that, as you've done your own work, your own personal growth, your own reflection, whether you do it through a coach or counselor or, study group at church or something like that, if you spend some time reflecting on it, you'll know these are my ways of reconnecting to myself, or really developing my sense of self-love. That's going to go in the middle box. And the box to the right are your top values. Just brainstorm those. And the reason I want them on this toolbox is you're going to use them for decision making. As very busy caregivers, the next time someone at church or your family or school or a friend says, hey, can you do such and such for me? I want you to learn to pause. Don't immediately say sure and then figure out how to do it. Pause. You want to make sure that saying yes to them is not saying no to you. And then you want to check to see, does this fit one of my top values? And if it doesn't, learn to say no. There is nothing wrong with saying no. I want you to hear this, because if it is a win for you to say no, I promise you, the way our loving, benevolent universe works is it is a win for them also. Even if it's uncomfortable, even if they don't like the answer, because in your saying no, if it really should be a no for you, otherwise it's self-abandonment for you. If it really is a no for you, there is somebody else that it is a gift for them to have to step up and, fulfill the role that you would have if you had said yes. So I just want for you to give yourself permission to say no, and you're going to use your value list as part of the check that you do to see if this is something I want to say yes to, because it really is something that is important to me. Or if in this particular case, no, consider I have a limited amount of time to develop to the things that really are important to me. I need to say no to this right now. Okay, I'm ready for the next slide. Trying to watch the time. The middle section of the form. First, I'm going to talk about the social connections. On my form, I've reduced it to initials, but I don't want you to do that on your form. I just did that to protect my friends and family, their privacy. So on your form, here's what I want you to put in that box. There's all different kinds of people we need to reach out to at different times. You're using this tool to help as a resource for when you ask the question, what am I feeling right now and what do I need? Sometimes you're going to want to, find an exercise buddy. Well, you have friends that you turn to for that kind of thing. List that activity and write out the friends that you would call. You have certain friends that if you're really troubled by something, you're really upset by something, they can just listen to you without judging and without immediately jumping into fix-it mode. Even our most well-meaning friends can immediately start to try to fix it. And sometimes we just want someone to listen. And, that's going to be a short list of friends that can just hold space for you and be there with you and listen. So you're going to want to list that person. You're going to want to list the person that if you're at a doctor's visit with one of your kids and it's running long and you need to pick up the other kid from school, there's someone you can call. Just go ahead and write down that situation and that person's name. And here's what I want you to get, like in moments of crisis, like, oh my gosh, sometimes our brains just where do they go? We can't even remember our own street address, our own phone number. That's why I want you to go ahead and list out these different situations that you have friends that you want to call on and list their names out in this box. So play and creative expression, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. The only thing I want to say about that is please list big things and small things. So, things that take a while to do and things that only take 15 minutes to do. Because sometimes you have a lot of time, sometimes you don't. And that's all I want to say about that. It's a very important box. I don't want to belittle it, but everyone can figure out how to fill out that box. Coping skills and mood boosters. Coping skills, like the self-love box of the previous section that I talked about, this is something that you've learned over time. These are the coping skills that you use. Either you've worked with a coach or a counselor, or one of my nephews is autistic. Certainly, we've learned as a family to watch for when he's getting overstimulated. He has certain coping skills he uses. This is something that would be appropriate there if that's one of your family situations. So that's just an example of what you would put there. Mood boosters are quick and easy things like you can see over here, I have hot air balloons hanging up in my office. That's a mood booster for me. These are quick things that just, add joy. Adding flowers to your house, that's a mood booster. And I highly recommend watching Ingrid Patel Lee's TED Talk, Where Joy Hides and Where to Find It. She talks about the aesthetics of joy and gives many wonderful examples about adding aesthetics of joy into our living spaces. A couple more things that I want to just take a brief moment to talk about because I can't help it. I want to take the opportunity to point out there's a wonderful website on self-compassion. Again, if you'll go to my own website on the resources page, there's a link there. It's Dr. Kristen Neff. She has this wonderful workbook called the Mindful Self-Compassion Workbook. And she has an accompanying website. She has wonderful exercises to help you develop self-compassion. And she has some guided visualizations, or she calls them guided meditations, to listen to. The very first one is like a 7 to 9 minute self-compassion for caregivers. I highly recommend you go to that site. It really does model loving, nurturing, compassionate, accepting self-talk. I am struggling today, and that is okay. I am feeling overwhelmed in the moment. I'm doing the very best I can, and that is okay. I love her little guided meditations, as she calls them. So I highly recommend that. The other thing that I wanted to mention on this page was savoring. Savoring is something that adds no time to what you're doing. Savoring requires you to be present in the moment. And I'll use as an example my husband. He's a typical workaholic guy that is trying to be much better about that. But after he got the concept of savoring, he committed to his first half cup of coffee every morning. He's going to savor at least that. Sometimes he makes it through the full cup before he's checking his email and doing stuff like that. But that first half cup, he can just really be present to drinking it. He loves coffee and, enjoying the flavor of it. If it's pretty, he'll sit out on our back deck and really just enjoy the moment of savoring. You can savor anything like that. Any of our daily activities. One of the things I used to enjoy savoring, thank goodness, because now my youngest is 20. When he was in grade school, I loved watching little kids during the pickup, after school pickup. So anyway, that's an example of savoring that would go under mood booster. And now I'm ready for the last one. So we're almost done. This is the very last one, last but not least. and I saved it for last in case I ran out of time. But the top section is the stuff that is self-care for our physical body or involves our physical senses. So I think we're most used to, when we think of self-care, we think getting enough rest, taking care of our body, getting enough exercise, getting the right things to eat. These are the things you're going to complete with what works for you. What does it mean to be loving and nurturing to yourself? And please, I want to take a moment to say this self-care toolkit is not about what you should be doing. Please keep your shoulds off the list. What is it that makes you feel loved and cherished and nurtured when you think of your physical body? When you think of getting enough sleep and relaxation? I have a quote on there that I use when I can't sleep. That's what works for me. I want you to find your thing. And I want to take just a brief moment while we're here to talk about meditation, because if you don't already have a meditative practice, it makes all the difference in the world, I promise you. And I mean a true meditative practice, like the guided meditation that I talked about earlier. That's not really meditation. I'm talking about a meditation that disengages the active mind, and because a really good, solid meditative practice takes you into a different brainwave pattern, and it's a very healing state. So those meditative practices, you don't try to stop your active mind. Thoughts are gonna come, whether you want them to or not. But all these, like focusing on your breath, or focusing on a candle, or focusing on a mantra, you're training your brain to focus on that and just let the thoughts drift by. And when you notice that the thoughts are really loud and you're focused on the breath, or the candle is way in the background, then you just notice and you swap them and you bring your focus back to your breath, or the mantra, or the candle. 20 minutes of that really good type of meditation is worth 2 hours of sleep to your physiology. So even under stress, even when it's like, oh my goodness, am I going to get enough sleep? I set my alarm 30 minutes early. I might have to set it at 5:30 or whatever to get 20 minutes of meditation. And then I'll lay back down for 10 minutes. And let me tell you, that 10 minutes of sleep after meditation is amazing. And I wake up with my alarm and feel great. But I want to tell you that it's doing so much more even than, what I mentioned regarding 2 hours of sleep. That's just one of the benefits of meditation. So highly recommend, if you don't have that practice, and to find your own, find what works for you. Contemplative prayer, true contemplative prayer, has the same physiological effect, as does being out in nature. My dad is a horse guy, so after he's come back from trail riding, I can tell you his physiology feels like he's just had an amazing meditation. So it doesn't have to necessarily be transcendental meditation. Just make sure it's a really good, consistent meditation practice. And I think that's it, unless I have a quote or something, or my contact form at the bottom. Oh, here we go. So yeah, with every act of self-care, your authentic self gets stronger and the critical, fearful mind gets weaker. Every act of self-care is a powerful declaration. I am on my side. I am on my side. Each day, I am more and more on my side. How beautiful is that? So the last page is my contact form. If you can leave it there, and just if there's been any questions, just let me know.
I do not see any questions in the chat box.
Okay.
But everybody has your contact information. It was a very informative session, and I think some great tips, definitely during this very stressful time for everybody.
Absolutely.
Between COVID and everything else that's going on in the world, it's nice to have a calming effect. So we appreciate the time you spent with us tonight, and And thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Next up is our sparkler sponsor, OtsukaVisterra. I'm sure I got that one wrong. And David Aldak, who's the CMO, is going to lead us off.
Great. Thank you very much, Stuart. We'd really first like to take a moment to thank you and Bonnie and Carrie for this wonderful opportunity to present to the IgAN Foundation, to folks who are online, to share with you our passion for IgAN. So who is Visterra? We're an MIT spin-out biotechnology company, and now part of the Otsuka family. We're based in Waltham, just outside of Boston. Visterra and Otsuka are both dedicated to the mission to transform kidney care. You might know about Otsuka already. Otsuka developed the only approved drug for the treatment of polycystic kidney disease that's on the market now. And Visterra has a pipeline that we think is very exciting that is dedicated to kidney diseases and other conditions of autoimmunity. My colleague, Dr. Mohit Mathur, a wonderful young nephrologist and physician scientist, is going to share with you this evening our aspirations for VIS-649, which we hope and expect will become a precision therapy for IgA nephropathy. Rather than taking any more of your time, let's go to Dr. Mathur, who will share with you some exciting information. Go ahead.
Thank you, David. Good evening, everyone. It's indeed a great pleasure and honor for me to be speaking to this wonderful foundation. And I echo what David just mentioned. For us here at Visterra and Otsuka, kidney diseases is a passion, and we dedicate ourselves to find treatments and solutions for rare and hard to treat diseases, which are hopefully safe and efficacious, and in many ways try to improve the quality of life of our patients. So with this, I'll start my presentation. So just give me a moment. So I think everyone can see my screen.
Yes.
This is the brief agenda here, as I'll be introducing a little bit about our company, our pipeline, and talk a little bit more about Visterra. Following that, I'll be talking about supportive care in IgA nephropathy, and finally, a little bit about our therapy or our product, VIS-649, which is a specific treatment that we are developing for IgA nephropathy. So, as David mentioned, we are a biotech company based out of Greater Boston in the Waltham area, and our focus has been kidney diseases and autoimmune diseases. We were established in the year 2007, and we're very proud to say that we have a product in VIS-649, which is undergoing clinical trials as of now in patients with IgA nephropathy. And I'll be talking a little bit more about this particular therapy. We are around 85 people, and we are all focused and dedicated in trying to find treatments for hard to treat diseases. As you can see, kidney diseases is at the front and center of our focus. We have a number of products that are being developed for many kidney diseases. And among them, IgA nephropathy has a special place for us. Our first product that's undergoing development or trials is VIS-649. It's in IgA nephropathy. And there are a number of other products in various phases of development, which will again be addressing a number of other rare autoimmune diseases and kidney diseases. This is just a brief snapshot of our clinical development team. We have a wonderful team who are all dedicated and working hard towards developing treatment and solutions for many diseases, including IgA nephropathy. And this particular team is focused on VIS-649, which is the product that we are developing for IgA nephropathy. We are a part of the Otsuka family, and many of the folks here at the IgAN Foundation know Angela Smith well. She has been a fantastic partner and colleague for us to work together. So with this, I go to my second topic of agenda, which is the supportive care in IgA nephropathy. So I'll take this opportunity to thank the IgAN Foundation for giving us this platform, this forum, for us to connect directly with our patients and caregivers. We have heard from Bonnie and Carrie about their respective journeys and challenges that they faced when their near and dear ones were diagnosed with IgA nephropathy. And one of the most important things that we all get from that conversation is that there was no support, and they had to kind of build their own support system in the form of this IgAN Foundation, which was kind of a place where people could come together who were affected by IgA nephropathy themselves, or their loved ones had IgA nephropathy, for them to connect and share thoughts and ideas and support each other. And along the way, I've attended a number of these Spark sessions, and these sessions are wonderful. They cover a host of different things, from medical to other non-medical issues, and today's session is a good example. We really enjoyed the talk by Lynn, and it really makes a lot of sense to put the oxygen mask ourselves first before we try to help others. That kind of echoes into what I'll be briefly touching upon from a clinical perspective or a medical perspective in IgA nephropathy. So what is the role of IgAN Foundation? Why is it so important for all of us, the community, the physician community, the industry, pharmaceutical industry, all of us to support an initiative like IgAN Foundation? So this was a study which was recently published where around 3,700 patients who are already known to have chronic kidney disease were interviewed. And they were asked a simple question: are you aware that you have chronic kidney disease? And the results were extremely surprising. In patients who were at low risk of developing dialysis, around 10% knew that they had chronic kidney disease. But what was more surprising was in patients who are at high risk of developing dialysis in the next 5 years, around 50% of those patients were not aware that they had chronic kidney disease. This is a very disturbing statistic and a very humbling number for us to see. Despite all the effort from the physicians and the medical community, somehow the message is not being conveyed in an effective way to the patients that they have chronic kidney disease. It could be due to IgA nephropathy or diabetes or any other disease, but there's a significant lack of communication and interaction between the patients and the medical community. And this is where IgAN Foundation plays an important role by being the patient advocate and a support group for patients who are diagnosed with IgA nephropathy, for them to discuss with their peers and their fellow patients to understand what it means to have IgA nephropathy and learn more. So this is a very humbling statistic that we have here. So what does it mean to comprehensively manage IgA nephropathy? So as the old saying goes, it takes a village to raise a child. Similarly, to ideally manage a patient with IgA nephropathy, it literally takes a village. So it's not just the nephrologist, or it's not just the physician who contributes to the treatment or care of patients with IgA nephropathy, but even in the medical team, there are nurses, dietitians, social workers, palliative care specialists who play an important role in managing IgA nephropathy. And apart from the medical team, there's a whole lot of there should be a large number of supportive members or supportive stakeholders who should be helping patient navigate this disease of IgA nephropathy. It could be physical or psychological symptom management, and spiritual or existential questions. And Lynn's talk today was exactly to the point, where it's not just the nephrologist or the physician who needs to be involved in patient care, but all other mental and physical well-being aspects should also be addressed. And as part of the spectrum, managing or maximizing quality and quantity of life is an important aspect. And finally, as the case may be, end-of-life care is also an important aspect of treatment. Optimal use of hospice or hospice or dignity support or bereavement support is also part of the kidney supportive care platform. So just to take a moment to digest and absorb this, that it takes a lot more than just a physician or a nephrologist or a nurse to look after someone with IgA nephropathy. It takes a lot of supporting role from many people from many aspects of life to help patients. And another study was recently published which addressed a similar question. So 370 chronic kidney disease patients were sent an online survey and were asked, what is the most important thing in your life? And they were rated as essential, important, or not relevant. This is kind of the survey that Lynn had just mentioned, but this is just from a slightly more focused nephrology perspective. Depending on how the patients, in what the medical status of the patient was, they had a lot of options, including kidney functions, proteinuria, albuminuria. You've heard all these terms before. But you know what was most important across all patients? It was quality of life. An overwhelming 95% of patients with chronic kidney disease felt that the most important thing or the most essential thing for them was to have a good quality of life. It was not what their creatinine was, what their GFR or proteinuria was, or in case of patients who are on dialysis, whether it's their dialysis fatigue or in case of transplant recipient, how their kidney function was doing, but it was the quality of life. And as you can imagine, quality of life is a matrix, right? It's not just one thing. You cannot have a good quality of life just because you have a good GFR, but everything else in your life is not going well. You cannot have good quality of life. So it's a combination of many things that needs to be addressed and addressed well for someone to have a good quality of life. And again, goes back to my point that having IgAN Foundation supporting patients with IgA nephropathy is a commendable job and needs to be supported. There was a question that was asked in the chat box and also in my interaction with the IgAN Foundation about supportive medical care. This is a specific component of the total supportive care in IgA nephropathy. It does not seem that this does not look like this has been addressed in the previous session. So I'll be touching on this briefly with a caveat that all of these may not be applicable to all patients. So these need to be discussed with your physician who knows your medical condition to say if these are applicable to you. But in general, these are around 8 or 9 supportive medical therapies which are recommended in patients with IgA nephropathy, and they're backed by clinical trials. They're backed by scientific evidence and evidence to show that these work. So the first 7 are actually known to work in clinical trials, and one of the trials in which it was shown to be successful was Stop IgA Nephropathy. So in this trial, around 1/3 of the patients who were enrolled for the trial actually had a reduction in their proteinuria without any specific treatment. All they did was take care of these 7 aspects listed here. So first and foremost is control of hypertension. So almost all patients with IgA nephropathy should have their blood pressure under control. The definition of under control blood pressure depends on the clinical situation. There's no one good universal definition, but in general, patients who have higher degree of protein leaking through in their urine, they need to have their blood pressures below 125/75 millimeters of mercury. Almost all patients with IgA nephropathy should be on either ACE inhibitors or ARBs. These are the drugs which have dual purpose or dual mechanism of action in IgA nephropathy. Number 1, they help in reducing the blood pressure. Number 2, they also help in reducing the proteinuria, both of which help in supporting the kidney function and help prolong the life of the kidney. Again, this has to be a decision taken by a physician depending on the individual clinical status. Number 3 through 6 are actually applicable to all of us. If you're obese, you need to lose weight. But in this clinical trial, It was done in a scientific way. The patients were helped by dietitians to lose weight in a scientific way. And it was shown in this trial that by reducing weight, if you have IgA nephropathy, you can reduce the proteinuria, which, as we know, I hope everyone knows by now, is an important milestone to achieve. That is to reduce the proteinuria. Similarly, low salt diet is applicable to all of us, even if we do not have IgA nephropathy. We eat way too much salt in our diet these days, but low salt diet was shown to be beneficial. Reducing cholesterol if someone has high cholesterol. Smoking cessation if someone smokes makes good sense to everyone, for everyone, but especially in IgA nephropathy, it was shown to reduce proteinuria. And finally, in some patients, eating a low protein diet may be beneficial, but again, this needs to be a decision that's taken by the physician and dietitian, looking at the various parameters, but it should not be construed as general opinion applicable for all patients with IgA nephropathy. Number 8 and 9, fish oil and tonsillectomy are controversial. There are some studies which have shown benefit of taking fish oil, but there are some studies which did not show any benefit. Similarly, tonsillectomy is widely practiced in Japan and some other East Asian countries, but the evidence has been conflicting, and it's not a widely used practice in most of the countries in the Western Hemisphere. So this is the sort of list of supportive medical care in IgA nephropathy, which almost all patients should be receiving. And again, depending on the clinical situation, some of these may or may not be applicable. So from here, I'll talk a little bit about the current treatment for IgA nephropathy. So as you can see, way back in 1990s, 1997 and 1999, there were a couple of trials which showed that steroids help. And the drugs that I talked about, ACE inhibitors and ARBs, they're a group of drugs which some of you might be on. They were found to be helpful in IgA nephropathy. But until now, there are no specifically approved treatment for IgA nephropathy. But there was a significant change or significant development in the around 2010. It was at this time that we began to understand the pathophysiology or the mechanism of how IgA develops. So around 2011 or 2010, we began to understand, why does someone have IgA nephropathy? What's going on? One of the basic things that we understood, that there are multiple steps for a patient to develop IgA nephropathy. And these steps, we will talk about it in a little bit, we'll talk about it in a minute, but these steps occur in a sequential way, ultimately leading to IgA nephropathy in the kidneys. The other important thing that we understood, or scientists realized, that in IgA nephropathy, kidney is almost a bystander. The primary defect is not in the kidneys, it's actually the body. It's a systemic autoimmune disease, and kidneys are the unfortunate bystander who have this collateral damage, which goes on to damage the kidneys in a significant number of patients. What does IgA nephropathy do to the kidneys? This is a sort of a microscopic view. I just talked about the stepwise damage that occurs in the kidneys, but this is renal glomerulus, or this is the functional part of the kidney. The top half is a normal kidney. This is how it would look if someone had normal kidneys. But in a patient with IgA nephropathy, there's a lot of inflammation going on. See the stark difference between the normal kidney and the kidneys with IgA nephropathy. There's a lot of inflammation, there are a lot of cells, there's a lot of protein leaking out, and even the blood vessels of the kidneys are affected in patients with IgA nephropathy. So this is a complicated picture. I'm not going to walk through the various cells or damage here, but just to suffice to say that there's a lot of inflammation and a lot of damage to the cells in the kidneys in patients with IgA nephropathy. So once we began to understand what's going on in patients with IgA nephropathy, I showed you that picture which came out in 2010, where we understood that there's a stepwise development or stepwise pathogenesis of IgA nephropathy. the pharmaceutical industry in general began to develop therapies towards various steps in that pathogenesis of IgA nephropathy. And you have heard many talks before this current session. There are 6 to 7 categories of drugs that are being developed. So that is a phenomenal development in the field of IgA nephropathy and in nephrology. As you're all aware, prior to this, there were no specific treatment. Patients who had IgA nephropathy would unfortunately just end up being on steroids. That's still the case, but we are making progress. As you can see, there's a lot of enthusiasm, and there are a lot of drugs that are being developed. So these are just the categories, and there are multiple drugs in each of these categories that are being tested in clinical trials. Finally, moving on to our specific drug that Visterra is developing. It's called as VIS-649. It's a treatment which acts on a particular protein in the body known as APRIL. We have a video that will show this in a little bit more detail. A few words about this video. So a big thanks to the IgAN Foundation and Bonnie and Carrie and other folks who have reviewed this video and given us critical input and have helped in making simplifying this video so that it's helpful for the patient community in trying to understand IgA nephropathy and also the role, the potential role of VIS-649 in IgA nephropathy. So a big thanks to all of you. So I'm going to play the video now.
IgA nephropathy, also called IgA-N and sometimes casually referred to as IgAN, is a rare autoimmune system disease that can result in the kidneys not working normally. In a healthy immune system, proteins called antibodies help the body defend itself against anything the body does not recognize and considers such as germs. Immunoglobulin A, or IgA, is a type of antibody, and normally IgA helps to detect and protect against foreign invaders in the respiratory and gastrointestinal tracts. In people with IgA-N, the IgA has an abnormal structure. The body does not recognize this abnormal IgA and considers it foreign. The body then starts to produce other antibodies, known as autoantibodies, against the abnormal IgA. These other antibodies and the abnormal IgA combine to form complexes that get deposited in the kidneys. These complexes damage the kidneys by causing inflammation. At first, the kidney damage can show up as leaking of blood and protein in the urine. Damage can also show up in the form of high blood pressure and swelling of the legs. In some people with IgA-N, the function of the kidneys are reduced significantly over a period of time. These people may need dialysis or a kidney transplant to live. It is not known what causes the formation of the abnormal IgA in people with IgA-N. In some people, this may occur due to their ethnicity, genetics, and/or exposure to things in the environment. There are no treatments to prevent the onset of IgA-N, and currently there are no approved therapies that specifically treat IgA-N. Scientists developed the study drug VIS-649 to block the body from signaling to another internal protein. This protein is called a proliferation-inducing ligand. This ligand can send signals to other proteins in the body, allowing the body to create antibodies. In the case of IgA-N, it can signal to make abnormal IgA and autoantibodies. This ligand is also called APRIL for short. In some early research studies comparing APRIL levels in different patients with IgA-N, the patients with lower levels of APRIL produced less abnormal IgA. They also retained better kidney function compared with patients with higher levels of APRIL. This suggests that blocking APRIL could reduce kidney damage in patients with IgA-N. Researchers believe that APRIL is likely to play a key role in the formation of IgA in the body. By blocking the signal to APRIL in patients with IgA-N, Viz 649 may be able to reduce the production of abnormal IgA and the autoantibodies, which may decrease inflammation in the kidney. A phase 2 Viz 649 clinical study called ENVISION is now enrolling patients diagnosed with IgA nephropathy. You can find additional information about this trial by searching for NCT 0428-7985 on www.clinicaltrials.gov or by emailing the study team at clinicaltrials@visterrainc.com.
So I hope this video was helpful in folks trying to understand the role of April in IgA nephropathy, and to put this in context of this figure or diagram that you have seen. Viz 649 will inhibit April right here, and as this diagram shows, April is one of the first upregulation of April is one of the first steps that occurs in patients with IgA nephropathy. All the other steps occur downstream. So we think that in April, right here, right at the beginning of right at the beginning of the evolution of IgA nephropathy or propagation of IgA nephropathy is a very good strategy. There are other drugs that are also under development. Most of these drugs act at the kidney level. But as you remember, I mentioned before, IgA nephropathy is not necessarily a disease of the kidneys. Kidneys just end up taking the brunt of the systemic disorder, which is the autoimmune disease. So we think this is a sound strategy, but there are other drugs that are also being developed for IgA nephropathy. We do have some preclinical data. We did some experiments in mice which had IgA nephropathy. So an anti-APRIL monoclonal antibody similar to Viz 649 was tested in mice with IgA nephropathy. There's an experimental model, and what we saw was that mice who were given this anti-APRIL antibody had lower proteinuria when compared to mice who were not given this treatment. This line here shows the proteinuria in mice with IgA nephropathy who were not given the anti-APRIL antibody, and these two lower lines here show the reduction in proteinuria. And similarly, the biopsy of these mice were also better in the animals which had received this anti-APRIL antibody. So about our trial, the ENVISION study, there are a few key inclusion criteria for a participant to be eligible for the trial. They need to be adults. They need to have a biopsy-confirmed IgA nephropathy. There are certain technical aspects and nuances that need to be fulfilled, but biopsy-confirmed IgA nephropathy is a necessity. As I mentioned before, being on ACE inhibitors or ARBs is the standard of care. Almost everyone with IgA nephropathy should be on these drugs. And what we require is that patients who would be interested in this trial should be on stable drugs or stable treatment for at least 3 months. They should have certain amount of proteinuria to be eligible in the trial. And in this case, they need to have at least 1 gram or more than 1 gram per day of proteinuria. And their kidney function should be more than 45 mils per minute. I know the foundation has had a session with Dr. Dana Rizik, who talked a little bit about the lab tests. So I hope this is clear. There are certain key exclusion criteria. Certain forms of IgA nephropathy are excluded. Being a transplant recipient is an exclusion. And if a participant has recently received steroids, or in other words, steroids within the past 6 months, they would be excluded. And patients with certain chronic infections, such as hepatitis B, HIV, would be excluded. Uncontrolled diabetes or hypertension is also an exclusion criteria for this trial. This is how the trial design is. I know, again, multiple sessions have been conducted on clinical trial design, so I'm not going to talk any more about it. But a patient who is interested will undergo screening, and if they're found to be eligible at the time of screening, they will be randomized to one of these 4 arms. It's like flipping a coin. there's a 25% chance of the participant to be enrolled or randomized to one of these 4 arms. So out of these 4 arms, 3 arms will receive the drug, and 1 arm of 36 participants will receive a placebo, which in this case is normal saline. So these are the 3 arms which are receiving therapy at different doses. The ENVISION trial is a global clinical trial. We are conducting this trial in many countries over the world, around 15 to 16 countries in the world. This is a map showing where the trial is being conducted. In the US, we have a number of sites where this trial is being conducted, and in fact, there are a few sites in the US that are already open and screening for this trial. We are also in Europe, in particular United Kingdom, Spain, and Spain. So we have a few sites in Europe as well. So what does it mean to be enrolled in this trial? If someone has undergone screening and is found to be eligible based on all the criteria that I just mentioned, the patient would be, or the participant would be receiving 12 monthly IV injections or IV infusions. As I mentioned before, 25% of the total participants would be receiving placebo or normal saline. The remaining 75% would be divided into 3 cohorts, and they could be receiving one of the 3 doses of VIS-649. And after 1 year or after 12 IV doses or monthly IV doses, there's a period of 4 months during which they will undergo further testing and analysis. And after 15 months, the study ends. But the patient or participant who has enrolled and completed this trial may be eligible for something known as an extension study. In this extension study, the participant for sure will be receiving the therapy. In other words, they are not blinded. They know that they will be receiving the therapy. So this is the trial design for our ENVISION trial. And what do we hope to learn from this trial? So first and foremost, what we want to understand and learn that this is a safe therapy. We have conducted a trial in healthy human volunteers, and this drug was shown to be safe. There were some adverse events, mild to moderate adverse events, but overall, this was a safe therapy. We want to test this similarly in patients with IgA nephropathy. So that's one of our primary objective, is to look for safety. And the second primary objective, is to see if this drug works. And we would establish that by looking at the proteinuria levels. We will check the proteinuria at baseline, and then again after 15 months to see if VIS-649 was able to bring down the proteinuria. So these are the 2 key objectives of our phase 2 trial. And based on these results and how the drug performs, we will decide and discuss the next steps, which could include a larger phase 3 trial. So this is my last slide, and as I mentioned before, as was shown in the video, we have this trial which is currently enrolling, and we have the information here. So at this point, Stuart or Carrie, are there any questions in the chat box, or do you have any questions from the foundation or anyone else?
I do not see anything in the chat box, Rajeev.
Okay.
So thank you so much for your presentation. It was very informative, and definitely looks like there's a promising future for your drug. Hopefully we can recruit enough patients to get the trial, keep the trial going. So we appreciate all the support financially from Visterra, and also all the hard work you folks do to help find a cure for our patients. And we really appreciate everything you do for us.
Thank you.
I did want to just add real quick that we will make sure, I'm sure there's going to be questions down the road. Carrie and I will make sure that we get those to you as we get them.
Sounds good. Folks from the Visterra team on the line, do you have any comments? Jill or Angela from Otsuka, any comments or any thoughts?
Mohit, this is David. Only to say again our gratefulness to the IgAN Foundation for all you do and for including us in your important messaging.
Indeed. Yeah, we are very grateful. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you. And from the Otsuka side, I just wanted to thank those of you that contributed and helped us put together the video. So that was very meaningful to us to have your input. So thank you.
So let me ask you this, since things are kind of quiet, are we allowed to take that video now and post it on our platforms, or is it proprietary?
As long as Visterra gives you permission to do that, I think you're good to go. So I think it's safe to say that should be fine.
I just want to add thank you, Lynn, for all that wonderful information. I can't wait to practice it myself. And for our Otsuka family and Visterra, thank you so much for caring about our patients. And my son, Carrie's daughter, all of us that are embracing, looking for other options other than steroids, we're very grateful. And we're thankful to work with you on this.
And Lynn, your voice is so soothing. I felt like I needed to have lavender diffusing and I needed to dim my lights, because your voice, just the way you talked about loving yourself and caring for yourself, like truly just put me in the moment. That was really great.
Well, good. Thank you, because the slide not working had me not feeling very soothed.
Oh my gosh. I thought it was
Yeah.
fabulous.
Yeah, it really was. It really was. It was a great session. And just know that it's on our YouTube channel, IgA Nephropathy Foundation. And we will, once Spark is over, start posting. Go here, look, do, see. And I know our first two sessions had like over 1,000, actually 4,000, one of them. So it'll be a resource in a library for people to go and educate. And we will be sure to make sure that we stay up on that.
Visterra team, we're going to get your stuff out as quickly as possible on our research and trials page. This was great information, great video, great information. We're super excited. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Carrie. And as I said before, it's indeed an honor and privilege for us to work for patients with IgA nephropathy. We'll continue to work forward. We'll work towards this.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And then don't forget to tune in next week for our last session, Patients Surviving and Thriving. You can register at our website, www.igan.org/2020 So hope to see you guys next week.
We should probably just add one more quick thing. Campfire.
Sure.
Yes.
We can.
Campfire.
Meet everybody within the organization. We'll have our board of directors, some of our board on there, answer like questions that we didn't get a chance to answer. Also talk about what topics we want for live Nashville 2021, and just an opportunity for all of us to everybody to get to know who we are. Who is the IgA Nephropathy Foundation? I think it'll be just a campfire, casual, and a great experience. So welcome, everybody.
Maybe I'll lose my mute finger and let people talk.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Great night. If any of you have family or friends in the storm path, we're praying for them.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.